when did Jeff Okudah start playing for the Minnesota Vikings? Do y'all even remember Jeff Okudah? He was the 3rd overall pick in the 2020 NFL draft. He was one of the best cornerbacks in the history of college football. Be honest, how many of y'all thought that Jeff Okudah was going to be a bust? And I want you to be honest, because there's only one person I knew that called Jeff Okudah not working out in the NFL, and that was my guy Luke G, who's a Detroit Lions fan. But everybody else, myself included, truly thought that Jeff Okudah was going to be a future All-Pro, one of the best corners in the game, kind of like the second coming of Derailed Revis. And I really don't know where it went all wrong for Jeff Okudah. Because at Ohio State, the guy had great footwork. At times, he could get a little bit handsy, but he was really aggressive. He was a ball hawk, and he didn't really have too many performances where a receiver was really just going off on him. And although you're not supposed to draft a cornerback as high as Jeff Okudah went in the draft, that seems to be an unwritten rule that most teams have. Certain players that play certain positions, regardless of how good they are, you don't take them as high as where Jeff Okudah went. But Jeff Okudah was expected to be a complete eraser. And when he got to Detroit with Matt Patricia, the scheme didn't really fit his skill set. A lot of folks would tell you that the Lions should have either drafted Derek Brown or Isaiah Simmons, which I know hindsight is 2020, but I still, if I was your general manager at the time, I still would have took Jeff Okudah. I'm going to be honest. There are certain players that even though they were bust, a lot of us believe that they would have been good players, and Jeff Okudah was one of those ones. Jeff Okudah was the consensus best corner in that draft, and the consensus expected him to be, at least at worst, a solid player. Now you fast forward to 5 years now, Jeff Okudah is on his 4th team in 5 years, and he's fighting for a starting spot on the Minnesota Vikings. Is this not the most tragic downfall in the history of the NFL? Jeff Okudah was one of the best cornerbacks in the history of college football. Literally. Jeff Okudah was so great at Ohio State, it was kind of unimaginable to see his NFL career playing out the way that it has. Now, how has his career gotten to this point where he's fighting for a starting job on the Minnesota Vikings, where I saw him with the 2nd team defense in the Vikings preseason game against the Houston Texans? Injuries have played a major part. It's hard to bounce back when you've had the amount of injuries that Jeff Okudah has had to go through. Another thing is, it is sometimes about where you go. If you don't want the starting quarterback of your favorite team to play like Anthony Richardson, go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, check us out, JT Sports, on all podcasting platforms. Give us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. Let's get back to the video. The certain scheme that you're in, when Derailed Revis left the New York Jets and he went to Tampa Bay, he had some of the worst, if not the worst season of his career, because he was playing in the Tampa 2 defense that Lovie Smith was recognized worldwide for, and it just wasn't a good fit for his play style. Derailed Revis has always been an elite man-to-man press corner, but you put him in a primarily zone-based defense, you neutralize what made him great, what made his skill set so unique. Then he leaves Tampa Bay, he goes to the Patriots, and he ends up resulting 80%, 90% back to his old form. And I believe he won a Super Bowl with New England as well, because Bill Belichick runs a lot of man coverage. Jeff Okudah has always been a really physical, really aggressive man press corner, similar to what Derailed Revis is in a sense in terms of his playing style. So with him being one of those incredibly handsy, incredibly physical corners in college football, They don't really call pass interference as much as what they do in the NFL. So you have the injuries. You have him kind of struggling to adapt to the NFL game. But he did have a few good performances. I remember not too long ago, we were praising Jeff Okudah for locking up Jay Jettis. Do you remember that? Do you remember when Justin Jefferson got locked up by Jeff Okudah? So the ability is there. He has the ability to play good football. Can Brian Flores bring that out of him, though? Because right now, he currently is suffering the most tragic downfall that the NFL has ever seen from somebody that had this amount of hype, that had this amount of prestige coming out of college. This isn't an Anthony Richardson kind of situation. There are certain players that you just look at and you just tell yourself there's no way possible that they can be a bust. Jeff Okudah is one of those guys. And I don't know how many of you guys felt the same way about Jeff Okudah that I did, but outside of my homie Luke G, I didn't hear anybody thinking that Jeff Okudah would be in the situation that he currently is in right now. And that's what's so fun about watching the preseason. You turn on a few of these preseason games, and although the starters aren't playing mostly, you see a few guys like Jeff Okudah that you remember that everybody was high on during the draft, and then a few years later, you're watching a guy like Jeff Okudah with the second-string Vikings defense, and you're just asking yourself, how did you get to this point? How are you not one of the best in the game? Now, he's been having a really good training camp up to this point with the Minnesota Vikings. They say that he's been lights out. He is a great fit for that Brian Flores defense. Brian Flores likes corners that get in your face, that press you, that are physical, that are willing to come in and aren't scared to get their hands dirty and run support. Jeff Okudah is one of those players. And if he can stay healthy this year, maybe we see him have a redemption arc to Jason Verrett. Do you remember Jason Verrett? He's an OG name, but if you are a diehard football fan, or at least you consider yourself one, do you know how good Jason Verrett was? Jason Verrett was a former first-round pick. He was a good corner when he was on the field. Key word, when he was on the field. This was the most injury-prone cornerback in the history of the NFL, literally. You breathe on Jason Verrett, and he got injured. I mean, to see Jeff Okudah fighting for a starting job on the Minnesota Vikings, I just ask myself how the mighty have fallen from Jamal Adams being forced to switch to middle linebacker to get a job on the Raiders to now Jeff Okudah playing with the Vikings backups. I couldn't believe it. At first, I didn't even know that was Jeff Okudah. I was like, Okudah? I know this ain't Jeff Okudah. It was. And I was just like, wow, Jeff Okudah, wow, you were supposed to be one of them ones. You were supposed to be what Patrick Surtain currently is right now. We thought that you were going to be one of the greats.